It is now my pleasure to welcome Katie Iwanin to the stage. Katie Iwanin is a Vice President of Marketing and Strategy at Minnetonka Moccasin. She has 15 years of experience in marketing and strategy and a passion for creating and growing brands that resonate with customers and communities. Prior to Minnetonka Moccasin, she was a strategy and account director at the agency Zeus Jones, where she worked with clients such as General Mills, the Minnesota Twins, Nestle Purina, Medtronic, Facebook, now Meta, and Target. She was also co-founder of Wallflower Foods, a CPG brand that made amazing waffles. So with that, welcome, Katie, for Evolving a Legacy Brand.
Thank you so much, Nora. Can you see my slides okay?
We can.
Great. I feel like the play version didn't work for me this time. Do you see my little sidebar?
We do.
Oh, sorry about that. Well, we're just going to roll with it. So, hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Nora, thank you for having me today. Happy to be here. I hope you enjoy my talk on evolving a legacy brand. So, to start, I wanted to have a shared language with everybody. So, what is brand building? What do you mean by that? Well, this is the simplest way I can speak to it. It's about creating an emotional connection between the brand and your audience. And I really kind of describe it as very similar to building a friendship. It's about trust, it's about shared interests, and it's about common goals and values. That's really going to be the basis of what I talk about today when I talk about brand building. And to start, we're talking about evolving a legacy brand. I definitely wanted to give you an example. So here is an example from the brand I'm currently at, Minnetonka. If you're from the Minnesota area, you'd know us as Minnetonka Moccasins. And this is the brand building challenge that I walked into in 2021. Founded in the 1940s, original products were influenced by Native American design. Founders of Minnetonka are not Native American. How to address cultural appropriation. So, how do you build this brand? Step into my shoes. What would you do? We're talking about, again, building trust, shared interests, common goals, and values. And that's really going to be the basis of what I share with you today. But before we get there, I kind of wanted to take a step backwards and really help define what's an emerging brand versus a legacy brand, because they are actually pretty different and you do want to approach them differently. So, to start, when we're looking at emerging brands are fixed in some ways in terms of the interpretation of what they're doing because the founders are present to set that clear vision. They're in the room with you, they know why they started it, they know why they're here. So it's kind of easy to, take that guidance and move forward together. But they're less established. They can change course quickly. They can put something out 1 month and 3 months later say, oh, that didn't work. I'm going to pivot and change the way I'm doing that, which can be an advantage against some of those legacy brands. Um, Another advantage, their products are created for today's needs and culture. It's built for market fit that's needed today. It's built for the things you need and are craving today. It's also building a customer base from the ground up. So you're kind of learning while doing. That's more of a challenge. Legacy brands have you beat there. And then the last one, awareness is the number one priority to brand growth, which I'm going to show you legacy brands in a moment, but that's where they differ a bit. And at the bottom, I've put some examples of these brands in each. I'll talk a little bit more about these in the upcoming slides, but just to kind of give you that juxtaposition. And then the other thing I wanted to say to set this up is I also think about these as a first generation versus a multi-generation brand. So these emerging brands, first generation. Now let's compare that to a legacy brand, which I define more as multi-generation. So when we're talking multi-generation, think about it more as a relay race. Leaders are advancing the founder's vision, and that's actually more open to interpretation because they've been around for a long time. The brands I showed you on the left have only been around for 10 to maybe 15 years most. The legacy brands have been around for 30 plus years. And in the case of Minnetonka, we've been around for almost 80 years. So the founders who started that, we can't talk to them anymore. They are no longer here. So it is that relay race of passing along, what do we think this brand should do now? The next is legacy brands are established. They must change slowly and connect the dots. They can't pivot quickly like an emerging brand. They have to, you have an audience that already follows you and knows you, so you have to create those connection points for them. The third is the products were built for a past need in culture, and you must adapt to the market. So this is why it's important to evolve a legacy brand. If you've been around for a long time, it's more than likely that the need is very much still relevant. It's why you still exist, but you need to reconnect it to the current cultural relevance of why people care about that thing still today, how that's solving their current needs. So that's really important to do in the evolution process. The next is legacy brands have a loyal base to learn and glean insight from before taking action. So again, this is a competitive advantage against an emerging brand. They know their audience. They've got likely years and years of data on them to understand where they might go with it. Because audience research, especially when it comes to a product, um, again, you're solving a very similar need. So often that research is still pretty good. And then the last one is what's different from emerging versus legacy is relevance is the number one priority to brand growth. So again, it's that evolution. It's how do we stay relevant today? How do we change to grow to our current and future audiences? And some brands have been great at this and others have not. And so I'll talk about that as well. So now that you kind of have the table set of what's an emerging brand versus a legacy brand, now I can go into my brand building blocks as to how you'd actually build a brand in either of these cases. And so I'm just going to jump right into that. So I'm starting again with an emerging brand. How would you get to those places of trust, shared interest, and common goals? I think it's these four things. First, you must establish credibility when you're emerging. And I think Reid Hoffman has a really good definition, pardon me, of this. And it's all about trust equals consistency over time. And so when you're emerging and you're a new brand, you don't have that over time in your favor. So you must create that consistency as quickly as possible in order to connect with the audience and know they can rely on you. The next is shared interests. So it's all about building an audience base around something that you both cared about. So in the case of Duolingo, I don't believe they started this way, but in the beginning, they realized very quickly that humor, gamification, fun was a lot better way to learn something that can be complex like a language. And they ran with that. And if you follow their social media, they really run with that. And they bring a lot of humor and fun to their audience. And that's a way that they can connect with them. And then the last one under common goals, there's two things. There's highlighting cultural relevance. And in that one, I want to use Liquid Death as an example. So, how does Liquid Death apply to today's culture? It's a water brand. How is water relevant today? Well, people have more information, so they want to be healthier. They don't want to always grab that cocktail or glass of wine or beer or whatever it is. They want to hydrate. They know what that does to their body. So Liquid Death positioned themselves as this really cool looking can that looks like beer. So if you're at the club, you can get one of those and maybe people don't even notice you're not drinking. So you can still feel a part of the community, but you can also just have water and not hit your body hard with that alcohol. So I thought that was really smart. And then in terms of disrupting the marketplace, that's important for an emerging brand to do. And that's important because that allows the audience to embrace that as well. Like you care about changing the way we work, so do I. So in the case of Slack, I think they did a wonderful job of that. Working in the old days of a lot of email collaboration, it was messy, it was inefficient, it was following email chains all over the place. Slack took a lot of that and put that in one focused place and allowed you to organize ideas and conversations through channels. And that disrupted anything that anyone was doing before in a grander scale. I'm sure there was little things here or there, but they were kind of one of the big players to do that. And that was really a threat to Microsoft, and they had to adapt. So this is, again, taking those brand building blocks, trust, shared interests, and common goals, but doing it through an emerging brand lens. So let's now look at that through a legacy brand lens, because it's similar but different. So for trust, it's not about establishing, it's more about celebrating heritage. So I love the brand LaCroix. They've been around since the 80s. And in order to connect with the audience today, they really leaned into the 80s aspect of their brand. They didn't change their logo. It looks very 80s. It looks like it's coming from a different time and place, and they've been very successful in the sparkling water space. For shared interests, it's all about growing audience loyalty because you're not building that base. You usually have a base to start with. So in the case of Minnetonka, people have been buying our shoes for generations. We have an audience base where your grandma bought them and then passed it on to their child, and now their child is giving it to their children. And we love to tap into that and grow that love for our brand. For common goals, it's about reinterpreting cultural relevance instead of highlighting where you fit. Again, this is where the evolution comes in. I brought in Rosetta Stone as an example because I think they haven't actually done a great job of this. I think Duolingo has smashed them in the marketplace. They used to be the category leader, but they haven't made themselves relevant to today. They still feel very stuffy, very old. And then the last one for common goals, instead of disrupting the marketplace, you have to fortify that position. You have to provide strength there. And although I think Slack has done a lot of smart things to take over the Microsoft universe, I actually think Microsoft has done a great job of holding their ground, especially in the business community. They're still kind of the number one interface in a business setting, and they've gone and taken some of those Slack features and brought them into Teams and other places. So it's a great way for them to see what's happening in the marketplace and then applying that to what they're doing. So there you go. There's the building blocks for emerging brand versus legacy brand. So let's go back to our challenge here, which is Minnetonka. How did we then take what we are faced with here and turn that into an evolved brand? Now I'm going to walk through the example there. So the key in the case of Minnetonka, because this was a misstep, if Minnetonka was an emerging brand, we absolutely wouldn't have built that brand on cultural appropriation. Never, ever would we have done that today. But because we can't go back in the time machine, we have an established brand. It's about reconciliation. So that's what you're seeing on the right. Instead of kind of going right into this celebrating of heritage, we need to reconcile that heritage first. We need to reconcile things with our audience, with our cultural relevance, with our marketplace position. So that's really how we went about approaching it. And now I'm going to give you examples of each of those. So to start, we rebuilt trust by reconciling heritage, pardon me. The first step was really co-creating a commitment plan, and that's co-creating with Native American advisors, people from the Native American community. We made a misstep. We said, how should we go about fixing this? How should we approach this? What is valuable within your community? And they helped build this 5-point plan with us. And I definitely want to take a moment to give credit to the Miller family, who are the generationally owned family behind Minnetonka. The president is the 4th generation. She is my boss, and her dad is the CEO. And they are all in on this and all in on doing this work. And they know that it's a lifelong commitment for Minnetonka to do this work. And they did it the right way. And so they started this work in 2019 before I came into the brand. But then it was my job in 2021 to really make it visible in a bigger way. It was quietly on their website, and we had to, to bring more awareness to what we were doing. And we had to do the work. Importantly, we can't just say we're doing it. We actually have to do the work. So we wanted to have more of those proof points under our feet as well. So we started with a commitment plan. Next, we hired a reconciliation advisor. This is her. She's fantastic. Her name is Adrienne Benjamin. She's a Minnesotan Anishinaabe artist and member of the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. And she is a part of so many key decisions of what we do at Minnetonka in our making our commitment plan real. And her advice is invaluable. She's coming from a different lived experience than we all are. And she brings the best advice to the table. And it's been a beautiful relationship. And so after we did that, we definitely looked to Adrienne as helping us make the choice of what's our first step to really make this visible. And she said, you need to apologize. So we took ownership for our misstep. We apologize for appropriating Native American design. And we did this strategically in a way where we announced our public apology on Indigenous Peoples Day in 2021 because we knew that the media attention would be focused on Native American culture on that day, and we wanted the community to see our message. And in that way, it really picked up and it worked. We shared the story with a local press, the Star Tribune, and we did it with a industry press in fashion. And from there, it was picked up over 79 publications. It went global. And although this was not our intent at all, we did this because we needed to do it. It was the right thing to do. We had to apologize. It actually brought sales to our website and awareness and things during that time as well. So doing the right thing can be very good for business. Okay, moving on. So reestablishing shared interests by reconciling audience loyalty. So this piece is about what do you and your audience care about? And in the case of Minnetonka, we both really care about Native American design, Native American artistry, celebrating that heritage. So what we did at Minnetonka is we're partnering with Native American artists to create products. Artists are receiving payment for their work. They're choosing a Native American nonprofit for Minnetonka to donate to in honor of their collection. And we're really telling those deeper stories on our website and all the content we're creating. I can't read all of these here, but please go into your website if you want to go into details. Our first launch was with Adrienne, who, again, our reconciliation advisor, but she's also an artist herself. So we created a line of hand-beaded hats with her. That was actually our first collection. And then we did these Beipesha mocks with her. Lucy Shefty was our next artist we work with. She's Red Lake Anishinaabe. She actually helped us redesign our Thunderbird, which was an icon of Minnetonka, but it was an appropriated icon. So we wanted to reconcile that. We wanted to reestablish that with an artist whose heritage was from this place. And man, there's so many wonderful details to that story, but Lucy wanted to do this for many reasons, and one of my favorite parts is her son is actually named Anamaki, which means Thunderbird in Ojibwe. Um, and it's just kind of this serendipitous moment. Um, Nora talked about serendipity, where the right opportunity came along. She has a son. It's something she's always cared about. She redesigned it, and it's even more beautiful than the original. And actually, by the way, she owns the trademark to this Thunderbird design. Minnetonka did not trademark it. Lucy trademarked it, and she has ownership over this design for perpetuity. And then this last one, Hannah Stanstrong, she's a Duluth-based Ojibwe artist, and we just launched her this fall. She has the Minukami collection. And I will say all the artists have named their collections. She made this beautiful pine cone design that is a symbol of strength in her community. And so again, we get to tell more of these culturally deep, heritage-rich stories through the eyes of the artists who've lived them. And I can't be more proud of being a part of this work. It's honestly very incredible. I could go on this slide, but I'll stop because I know we got to keep going. Okay, next one here in brand building, recommitting to common goals. So we wanted to reconcile our cultural connection. And when it comes to that, the Indigenous people are a cultural people. They have a strong heritage to be shared. And for us, we wanted to really share the heritage of those who we've affected most. Minnetonka is a Minneapolis-based Minnesota company. We are investing first with Native American artists in the Anishinaabe tribe of peoples. So Anishinaabe is a large group of indigenous peoples that encompass many tribes, which I've listed on this slide as well. I did want to share there's some depth to be seen here. So on the left side, you're seeing a kind of a Midwest chart of Native American lands and they're color coded here. So it's a lot more complicated than what I've presented on the right. Kind of one of the bigger swaths in there is the Anishinaabe people, but there are many other tribes within the Minnesota community. And I encourage you to visit it's on the bottom of the slide, but you probably can't see it. Native-land.ca. So it's actually a Canadian site where you can put in your home address and see what native lands you're on. And so that's where this came from. But just to say, coming back to the branding part of it, we wanted to reestablish and shine a light on the culture of where we're from. This was guidance from Adrian, our Anishinaabe reconciliation advisor as well. And coming up, so we have the three artists I showed you on the slide previously are all Anishinaabe artists. And coming up next year, we're actually going to have a Dakota artist as well. And she comes from pardon me, I want to get this right, a community of the Great Sioux Nation. That's the nation that the Dakota are a part of. And so we're going to continue to expand in Minnesota and then go beyond that as well to share broader stories. But that's where we wanted to start. Okay, next up in branding, this is kind of the last step, is recommitting to common goals. So this is about reconciling our marketplace position. So Native American artists still lack strong representation in the fashion industry. As we talk about our marketplace position, that's it. Minnetonka is a fashion brand. What can we do within our marketplace? And we really think there's still a lot more work to be done to bring Native American artists to the forefront. And so that's a big part of what we're doing at Minnetonka is we're putting a spotlight on the artists, on their work, on their heritage. We kind of take a back seat here. It's not our heritage authentically. And so you'll see at the bottom here, I've shared a collection of some of the news stories that have come out of that from PBS. There was a broadcast there that also ran through NPR, a few Fast Company articles as well. I'm really proud that we're able to bring this more visibly, and we'll continue to do that because we know we're also a part of educating and showing more companies that when you do make a misstep, you can change, you can grow, and you can actually make it better for those around you. Okay, to kind of end this example of evolving the legacy brand of Minnetonka, of course, you probably wonder, how's it going? Well, first I'll say Minnetonka's reconciliation efforts have been really positively received by the Native American community. We've heard that through Adrian, who is, a strong member of her community. And honestly, that was the most important community for us to reach and feel as if we were doing right by. So we feel great that that has been the kind of response so far. Next, I shared those 3 ongoing partnerships with our Native American artists, and we are launching 2 more next year. And I'll also say all of those are long-term relationships, or at least we hope. Several of those artists, I just highlighted one product that we launched with them, but we've actually launched several with a few of them and will continue to do so. So this is not just a one and done. A lot of brands do that where they bring one artist in and they're gone, or they're kind of like they're artists in residence or artists of the month. No, these are going to be long-term relationships for us and for these artists because we want to continue to build that story with them and shine a light on their artistry. The other things I'll say is business wise, our limited edition styles of Native American design products have frequently sold out. So people are even more excited to be a part of buying these shoes, wearing these shoes. I know I am. I did not want to wear the old Thunderbird until we redesigned it. Now I wear my redesigned Thunderbird Anima keys everywhere. And I can't wait for people to ask me questions about it because, as you have seen, I have a lot of things to share about it. And then this last one, relaunch of Thunderbird Anima Key is actually on track to sell 3 times more on our digital channels than our retired version from 2019. So again, a great business upside here. It wasn't the only thing we were trying to do here. We knew we had to do right by the community, but again, you connect with your audience, you build that trust, you have those shared goals in mind, you have those shared interests, and the business can follow. Okay, last thing I wanted to talk about before we move to the question point. I want to leave you with some final thoughts on what's on the horizon of brand building. So I don't have a crystal ball, but these are what I see as future challenges coming in the brand building space, and also kind of my guesses for how we might start to solve them. So in terms of trust and what's going to be the challenge there, I believe there's still going to be a continued erosion of trust in businesses and institutions and in the way that you connect with a brand. And so, from my perspective, I think a stronger interest in heritage brands that evoke a simpler time through nostalgia, authenticity, pardon me, and consistency will really be the way forward. I know in Gen Z in particular, they're really looking backwards and love nostalgia. And I think part of that is because it's fixed in time. They can embrace that, they can understand it. The world today is so chaotic and there's so much that we don't know that that feels easier and simpler. So I'm saying brands lean into that. This is a great time for legacy brands actually because you have a lot to lean into there. The next one, shared interest. I believe there's going to be, unfortunately, an increased polarization of values. We're seeing that in politics. We're seeing that in the world. We're seeing that in brands and brand choices too. And what that's going to lead to is a greater need to disconnect from online communities. And I saw this recent article in Ad Age talking about Gen Z. They're not seeking social first, but actually social free in the future. And what does that look like? Because I know in branding, a lot of our money is spent in social spaces to reach people. And to me, I think brands are going to need to find new places to connect with these audience. It's paramount. I don't know what that looks like yet, but I think the sooner we can figure that out, the better. And then the last one, common goals. I think there's going to be an increased cultural and marketplace disruption accelerated by AI. And, Mark did a great job of talking about some of those AI disruptions. That's going to lead to a stronger emphasis on humanity and the things only humans can do. Brands should adapt by standing up for human issues and incorporating those human touches into their product design. What can only humans do? Make it more imperfect. It doesn't have to be a carbon copy. I think the more brands can do that, the better off they'll be. So, thank you for listening. There's how I went about evolving a legacy brand. Hopefully, you have some new tools in your tool belt. Even if you're not in branding, hopefully, it gives you a new framework to think about evolving something, especially when you've gone through a misstep. I'm here to answer any questions. Also, here's my LinkedIn if you want to follow me or, continue the conversation there. I would encourage you to go to our website on Minnetonka. We sell shoes, so I'm fortunate enough that I get to offer you something today. So please screenshot this. 30% off and free shipping on anything at Minnetonka Moccasin. Use promo code evolving30, valid from today all the way till 10/13. We're going into the holiday season. Oh, I can't stop being a marketer. But thank you.
That's fascinating, Katie. So a reminder to all put any questions in the Q&A. We already have a few that we'll dive into, but feel free to add them as she's answering. So a question about the visual brand identity also. So you talked about um, the company overall and the product. But have you applied this thinking to refreshing their visual brand identity? And if so, how?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question because I didn't show a lot of that work here today. The answer simply is yes. Actually, we've just completed refreshing our brand identity with a local brand agency called Magenta. They're awesome if you're looking for somebody. And we're slowly starting to use that work. So if you follow our emails or internally, we're switching over business cards or our photography style. We've started doing that in the places we can. And then we'll actually also be refreshing our website look and feel by November. So that'll be coming soon. The key to me in that brand refresh project was really about retaining our heritage, at least the non-appropriative pieces, while modernizing to attract a future audience. Because we've always been known for comfort, so I wanted to bring more warmth to the brand. It actually, if you look at our website today, it's black, it's red, it's gray. Those are such stark colors. It feels almost jarring. I wanted to bring this warmth in, this coziness, this more of this connection to Minnesota, actually. We are from Minnesota. Nature has this nice warming palette. So not only do you get that comfort, but you get that comfort of Minnesota. And I'm also proud to say we worked with a Native American perspective in this work as well. Her name is Ashley Zeminga, and she's an amazing Lakota brand designer. She's freelance. So if you want to work with her, I definitely recommend it. And so bringing that perspective into this work, making sure we are doing right by that community on this whole journey, it's just second nature to us now in everything we do, as much as we can.
That's fantastic and a good lead if anyone needs some designers. So there's a question about evolving the brand from within the company. How has it been received internally by the people that work there, especially perhaps legacy employees? What's it been like to try and do this work at a legacy company?
Yeah, that is a great question. And of course, a lot of the stuff I shared today was a lot of the external stuff because I was talking about connecting with external audiences. But internally, we're also doing the work. So we have Native American speakers that come and talk to our company to help understand the deeper storytelling and deeper perspectives and deeper kind of reconciliation that needs to be done and why. It's giving people the why, it's giving them the ammunition to want to do that work because I think when you understand the depth of what you've done to somebody, it's really hard to not want to take action. So that has created a shared space, I think, in terms of sharing the work of wanting to reconcile. I'll also say it has hit different departments differently. Obviously, I'm in the marketing department, and it's a daily thought for us to think about how we do this as we're connecting with the outside world. But how does the warehouse think about that? How does IT think about that? So we often have those conversations to make sure that we're trying to include everyone in that work. And so I think that's why it's important to come from that emotional place and not always the logical place first. Yes, this is part of the business, but also emotionally, this is the right thing to do. And oh, by the way, Minnetonka's mission is to do right by our community, our people in our world. So in that way, we can connect it back to the mission as well. So it doesn't feel like the business is changing. It just feels like the way we approach it is changing.
Yeah. Another one for the initiative around brand reconciliation. Did you set any specific quantitative goals? Can you talk about how goal setting and measurement differs when there's something more than just a financial business objective at stake?
That is a great question. And honestly, that's something that we're still trying to figure out. Again, with reconciliation, even if business went down, we still would have done it. It was what we had to do. It was the right thing to do. And so, in that way, we weren't being strict about measurement to start. I know that's easy to say because we're a private company. We didn't have shareholders that were hanging over our heads. Yes, they have a board and it's a family board and things like that. But it wasn't like you must also have shareholder value at the end of this. So I think if that was at stake, we probably would have had to be a lot more rigorous in terms of the measurement aspect. So without having the clarity of that, what we did use is kind of audience reactions. So some of the stuff I was sharing with you in terms of how often were we picked up in press? How many views may that have gotten? How can we connect the dots back to the business side of it to see was there a business lift when those stories would launch or when we'd be kind of making those connections or launching products? Also, I shared some of those anecdotes in terms of selling the products themselves. How well did they sell? Did they sell out? Did they not? How many days? And so we are honestly across the board very positive signs on all of that. I will say footwear overall is down since COVID. So um, that's been difficult, but this is one of the shining lights in terms of when we launch these products, we see the business rise. So, but yeah, still continuing to find out different ways to measure. So if people in the chat have ideas, I'm open to that too.
Awesome. Well, good work. It gets a good outcome. That's a great thing to hear. Thank you so much, Katie. We will take one more break and then we'll come back with all of our speakers today for a panel